Welcome to the Master Books podcast, where we bring you conversations that will strengthen your biblical worldview and the faith of your family. I'm Jennifer White, publicist at Master Books, a division of New Leaf Publishing Group. As host of this show, I'll be opening the doors to the Master Books family library of books, authors, and curriculum. For over 45 years, our company has been about one thing: ink on paper to touch eternity. In a world increasingly at war with God, we are publishing to partner with you to disciple your family, the church, and the nations.
Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Master Books podcast. Today I have a very special guest. You may recognize her. She is Carrie Lindquist, the author of our very popular Foundations Phonics and the Let's Talk Science series for elementary students. Carrie, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So Carrie has quite the homeschool background, and I would love for her to tell a little bit about her own story.
Yeah, so I was actually homeschooled from 1st through 12th grade, and at one point I got myself expelled from homeschool due to my strong will and attitude. So that's a different story for another time.
Sure.
But I will say quickly that if any mamas listening are homeschooling a strong-willed child, know that there is hope. It's not all about the little battles that you're fighting today, but about the character that you're working to develop in them for tomorrow. God is really using you to develop that character, and they're going to need it in the world that they are going to face as adults. And so during my high school years, I worked for a homeschool company. I managed the shipping department, and I also did quite a bit of customer support during that time. And so I was helping a variety of moms troubleshoot and find the best solutions curriculum-wise for their family. And I learned so much during that season. The Lord really used the experience to grow a passion within me for helping homeschool moms find solutions that would really fit into their life really well. And so once I graduated, I earned my degree in education and married my husband, Wayne. We've been married now for 11 years, and we have 3 very, very energetic boys. We started our school year actually this Monday, and my oldest is now in 5th grade. I don't know how that happened. My middle son is starting 3rd grade, and my 10-month-old finally graduated the class of sleeping through the night, and so we are really thrilled about that.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for your family. And I love that you have so much experience with homeschooling. I mean, your own homeschool experience and then serving the homeschool community for so long. And now you, someone who had issues with school and even got yourself expelled from your parents' homeschool. By the way, Carrie Lindquist, if you don't know, is Randy Pratt, the president of New Leaf Publishing Group. She is his daughter. And Kristen Pratt, the curriculum development officer of Master Books, as well as the author of the Language Lessons for Living Education series. So she is the beautiful daughter of 2 of our great and fearless leaders, and we're just thrilled that she has taken all of her experience and put it into Foundations Phonics as well as Let's Talk Science. And these are very popular courses, and we are just thrilled that you're here to tell us about how you developed them to help the homeschool mom win at what you already know what it's like to homeschool. So thank you for doing that.
It's an honor to serve the homeschool community, for sure.
Well, and also the kingdom. Like, I love that you developed Foundation Phonics to really build the kingdom. And we're going to get into that today as we talk. But first of all, I want you to talk to the homeschool mom. Let's just share from your heart, like, for those who are afraid to homeschool because they're afraid to teach their child to read, that would be too daunting. And you have developed a resource to make that not daunting at all. And I'd love for you to share how you did it and why it's working.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the fear of teaching reading, it's a very real fear, but I think at the end of the day, it is one that we're conditioned to have in our society. When you really stop and think about it, we've taught our child everything they know up until this point. We've taught them how to walk and how to eat properly with utensils, some maybe a little neater than others. We've taught them potty training, and we may have even taught them at this point their basic colors, their letters. They may already know some letters and sounds, and numbers. But all of a sudden, when we reach learning to read stage, we feel like we are no longer qualified to teach them.
Good point.
And I think that the truth is teaching reading is really just an extension of everything that you've already been teaching your child. This is just the natural next step. And I believe that you are your child's best teacher, that God has uniquely called and equipped you to teach and raise your child. And so when my oldest son was starting to reach learning to read stage, I noticed that this fear was beginning to develop in my group of mom friends. And as we would talk about the future and our school options with our children, the conversation would turn, and the most common comment I heard was, I would love to homeschool, but I'm worried about teaching my child to read. I just don't think that I can do it. And so at that time, I began to think through the conversations that we were all having together and evaluate what the roadblocks seemed to be with teaching reading. And so often the process seemed to feel complicated. The manuals were very big or required a lot of prep time. It seemed really time consuming and in some cases even kind of expensive. And so a lot of us during this stage when our kids are young, we're juggling a lot of things between older kids, a baby on the hip, maybe ministry, we're homeschooling. Sometimes there's medical needs and a lot of people also are managing small businesses. And you also have the financial constraints of trying to stretch your budget as far as you possibly can. And so, with all of that in mind, I really wanted to create a learning to read program that was not intimidating. So, it's only maybe an inch and a half thick. It's very, very approachable. It's designed to be very easy on mom and practical in an everyday life setting. And it's designed to create a space for those special memories to be made. And so my mom actually taught me how to read, and some of my most special memories come from sitting on the couch beside her as she was teaching. And I wanted other moms to be able to experience that joy because it is so incredibly special to just watch your child's eyes light up as the world is coming to life. There's nothing like that excitement when they finally master that skill. And, now they have the world of so many different books, and most importantly, the Bible, the written word of God that they can be now reading for themselves. And so Foundations Phonics is really designed with mom's success in mind. So some of the key features that I built into the course are that it's really grab and go. When it's time for a lesson, you can just grab the book, sit down on the couch with your child, and start a lesson. Like I said, we're often juggling the older students, the younger students, maybe a baby in the season of life. And so I wanted it to be easy for those days when there's just a lot of needs going on in the household or you haven't had a lot of sleep, that you can just sit down, take a deep breath, and enjoy making those memories with your student as well. And in addition to that, the lesson narrative is designed for busy students. So as I was writing the course, my oldest was extremely busy with a very, very short attention span. I'll often joke that from the moment I first felt him move in the womb, he hasn't stopped moving. And that is really the case with him. He is always on the go. And so the lesson narrative in Foundations Phonics is about 3 to 5 minutes, and it has breaks for interaction or physical activities. So maybe they jump when they hear something or they're raising their hand, and that will help to keep busy students engaged. And something that I like to do with my own students as well is when we start a lesson, I will hand them the little learner activity sheet for each lesson, and then they can sit and color the letter that they're learning for that day, and that helps to keep their hands busy while their ears are listening. I also included a lot of bonus activities because, we want to be able to have fun and do that hands-on side, but a lot of times that is also very overwhelming, especially in these busy, busy seasons of life. And so these are designed to be very easy on mom. They're optional, so if you don't have time that day, there's no pressure, there's no guilt. And if you do pick up the lesson, you read through the lesson and decide, hey, we have some extra time today, I'd like to do an activity with my children. A lot of the materials that they use are going to be your household common items. So we're talking things like flour, a baking tray, maybe some sugar, loose letter magnets or stamp tiles, even Scrabble tiles if you have those. Things of that nature. So it's really easy to just spur of the moment say, well, let's go do this activity and have some fun. So if you're able to plan things out ahead of time, that's awesome. And if you're not, it's still really easy to have some fun and make some memories with your student. So some of these activities are going to focus on the letters that they're learning. So maybe they are creating the letters with some toys or toy cars, even maybe their siblings, they can figure out how to create a letter with siblings. And others are going to reinforce a biblical concept that they're learning about. And so one of my favorite ones comes from early on in the course as they're talking about creation and the fall and how sin really affected the world and the consequences of sin. And so what you can do is you give the student a piece of clean white printer paper and then paint their hands and ask them to touch the paper. And so once they've gotten their handprints on the paper, then say, "Oh no, our paper is all messy. Can you remove the paint?" And so the student all of a sudden gets a little look of panic in their eyes as they start to rub away at the paint and see if they can pick it up. And at that point, they're adding more paint now. There's paint all over the page. The page has gotten crinkly. Sometimes it even gets torn. And as they realize that there's now nothing that they can do to remove the paint from their page, it becomes a really great conversation starter for how sin also changed the world. And it was something that there's nothing that we can do in and of ourselves to take away our sin, to change things, to put things back the way they were. And that is why we needed God to come pay the price of sin. And that just becomes a really beautiful illustration for the young students, that only God could rescue us. And so that sets the stage for the rest of the course as they're learning to follow the gospel message through. And so one other feature is that it's designed to be really, really flexible. So you can sit down and complete a full lesson all in one sitting, or you can complete segments as your student's attention span kind of allows. It's also flexible. Some students are ready to learn how to read before they've developed the hand-eye coordination and the hand dexterity required for writing. And so if you have a younger student that is so excited and so ready to learn how to read, you can get started and not have to worry about the writing section. Or if you're working with a student that's perfectly ready for writing, you can dive right in and do that as well. So it's designed to be flexible, for whatever situation you're working with your student.
I could just cry thinking about that activity with the paint and the paper, and what a foundation you're giving them for the gospel so early in life. And I can just, I mean, I'm 53 years old, and I can imagine how that would have changed my life, for the last 50 years, or, almost.
Right.
To have known that, to have seen that so, perfectly demonstrated. I'm so thankful that you did this, and I'm so thankful that you worked so much joy in activities and interaction with the parent for the child in this course. And we love that. I went back through the website at masterbooks.com and looked at the reviews yesterday, and there were 552 reviews as of yesterday. And so I'm just amazed at how many people and all around the world, people are using Foundation Phonics to learn to read, the Bible, to learn to trust the Lord. And, I just can't imagine a better way to start a student out. So thank you for doing that. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about why you named it Foundations Phonics.
Yeah, so the reason is really twofold. And the first is because reading is a foundational skill for the whole rest of a student's education, right? The second is because the heart of the program is really to lay a strong biblical foundation for the student as they're learning how to read. So I mentioned earlier that my mom had taught me how to read. And 25 years later, I still remember some of the silly jingles and the rhymes and the stories that she had taught at that time. Some of them are even part of our family culture. And so my siblings and I will joke and we'll sing each other a silly rhyme when certain situations arise. And so as I was developing Foundations Phonics, like you said, I began to think about what it would look like if the focus was on developing a biblical foundation and how that might impact life. So would the stories that I had learned come to mind now in adult situations, or the sayings or the activities come to mind now as I am facing things as an adult? And so as your child is working through Foundations Phonics, he or she is going to be learning about the creation of the world and how we're all designed by God, about God's commands and man's choice to disobey. They're going to learn about how God in his mercy had a plan to save us, and he or she is going to watch his plan unfold through the pages of the Old Testament. And so right from creation all the way through the themes and characters of the Old Testament, they're really watching the gospel unfold. And so finally, your child is going to learn about Christ and how he ultimately defeated sin and death. And by the conclusion of the program, the student will have learned to read, and they're also going to have learned all about the Bible, all about God's plan for salvation, why it was so important that Jesus came to save us, and most importantly, what that means for him or her individually.
I love that. Our mission, as most of you know, is ink on paper to touch eternity. And so Carrie has done that for you with Foundation Phonics. She has put ink to paper and beautiful pages, full color pages, easy to tear out, easy to take it and go. And it will impact the eternity of your child. It gives them the foundation to walk through life as we live in a culture that is constantly at war against God, against the principles, the laws of God, the laws of love, the laws of the kingdom of God. They will have this foundation. And I'm just so thankful for your homeschool journey. I'm thankful that you took what you went through and applied it in such a way that it's impacting just hundreds of thousands of people. So thank you. One of the things I love to do is to go to our social media platforms and look for, use the hashtag Foundation Phonics and see all the happy faces when they're doing their coloring their letter, or they're making a letter with their siblings like you talked about. That's so cute, where the kid is actually like lying on the floor becoming an A, or the two kids work together to become an A. That's so cute. And there's a certificate of completion at the end. They love to have their picture taken with that certificate. So I encourage all of you, if you just need a smile today, to go to the Master Books app or the Moms of Master Books Facebook group or Instagram and just search with the hashtag Foundations Phonics, and you will be smiling after you look at those. Those kids are so cute. So you have been homeschooling. You've got 3 kids. Tell the listener, like, what advice you wish you had in the beginning. What have you learned along the way? You've got a 5th grader now, you said. So what have you learned along the way that you could pass along to help a mom win at homeschooling today?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is that you don't have to look like anyone else. With social media, we're so surrounded by all of the images and all of the things, and you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that. And I think one of the beautiful things about homeschooling is that God created us as individuals and as individual families with unique needs. And that there's beauty in homeschooling, that we can really shape our homeschool day and our homeschool spaces to really fit who we are as a family and also what my students need. And so I know when to push them when they need a little extra pushing, and I know when to hold back when pushing them isn't going to be beneficial. And so really just seeking the Lord for wisdom, because we need that wisdom, and his wisdom is going to be better than anything that we're going to find online for sure.
Right.
Seeking his wisdom for our individual family, and then moving forward confidently, doing the best that I can for what he has called me to, for his glory ultimately.
That's brilliant advice. So it brings me to the final part of our show, which is Off the Shelf and Into Your Heart. And Master Books has been publishing wonderful resources for over 45 years to give people the wisdom to help unveil the glory of God to them. So I would love to hear which one of our books would be your favorite, or that has impacted your heart or the heart of your family the most.
Yeah, so one that I would really recommend is Israel Wayne's Education, Does God Have an Opinion? So I grew up as a homeschool student, and I've heard all of the reasons and all of the arguments for homeschooling. But I think it's still really important to make sure that we are holding a biblical philosophy for education, and to make sure that we are also ready to give biblically solid answers when questions arise from our family and friends, because that can also be a really great conversation point in sharing our hearts for the Lord and what the Lord is doing in our families.
That's great. And that has been a very popular book to recommend by almost all the guests on this show. So you're not alone in recommending Education, Does God Have an Opinion by Israel Wayne. I'm so thankful he wrote that book. There's so many quotes that really resonate with the homeschool families. Yes. So thank you so much, Carrie, for all the work that you put into Foundations Phonics and Let's Talk Science. We hope to have you back on the show to talk about Let's Talk Science soon. And thanks to your whole family, the whole Pratt family and the Lindquist family, for all the sacrifices you've made to make homeschooling better for the Master Books families. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the show. We are so glad you are here. We bless you in the name of Jesus, asking the Lord to give you that abundant wisdom that you need, and to also use you and your family to accomplish that exceedingly and abundantly more than you can ask or imagine by His mighty power at work in you and for His glory. And the same to you, Carrie.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next show. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for joining the Master Books podcast. This was fun, and we are really glad you were with us. We invite you to check out masterbooks.com. We have a big library of books that will feed the faith of your family. And hey, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss an episode. We'll see you next time.